Hey and welcome, I'm Hammeh and today we're going to be talking a bit about Overwatch's Competitive Season 5. Has it left you feeling a bit down in the dumps? Anecdotally, Competitive has felt, well, a little bit worse than usual maybe as an environment to play in. So I want to go through why this may have been or might be the case and analyse it a little bit, then have a think about things that we can do, or perhaps Blizzard might be able to do to solve it, and then finally round off with the positive. Look forward to cool stuff incoming that probably will change this, and indeed changes that are already on the way. Please do share with me your experiences in the comments below as you listen, and here are a few caveats to start with. A lot of what I'm expressing here is obviously my sample size of one, my opinion, and then a few things I've read, heard from other people in matches, the feeling that I've had in matches, and things like that. I also solo queue quite a lot. Overwatch is a team game, and the more that you queue with the others, the less you'll expose yourself, in part, to some of these challenges. I'd probably also say that I'm an average to slightly above average player, and finally, I can definitely improve a lot as a player and need to put in the right practice to do that, so this is not a I belong higher than my current rank video. Right, let's get stuck in. So I'll lead this off with personal experience to start with. Now, earlier this season in Season 5, at the very beginning of the season, I pushed myself to my highest SR ever, 3100 or so. So I got myself into Diamond and was thinking I was going to go for Master. Now, since mid to late May onwards, it's felt as though that things have really got bogged down quite a bit. I tilted 200 or so SR away, as I was a bit tiltier in a few sessions of play than a one-legged drunken sailor on the deck of a particularly slippery ship in a thunderstorm. But more on Overwatch's loss streak system later. Outside of my poor self-control in doing that, and I'll talk about that more later as well, there are a reasonable amount of people in various different places, actually in games, on the Overwatch official forums, Reddit, when you're actually in competitive, people chatting publicly on social media, and indeed YouTube content creators and others. Now, completely anecdotally, it feels that there's more competitive fatigue this season perhaps than other seasons, and that's setting a bit of a mood when the community look at particular issues. Now, Overwatch is entering what could be described as its difficult second album, sophomore slump kind of phase. We've had just over a year of competitive, and with Blizzard's seasonal events starting to repeat, probably with the Summer Games very, very soon, with sort of scope creep in some systems like the loot box and duplicates that Blizzard are addressing as well as the focus on esports that Blizzard are putting in the coming months with the Overwatch World Cup happening over the next 3 or 4 weekends in terms of the qualifiers, and also the Overwatch League announcements, which should still hopefully be launching later this year. My point is, with all of these different things going on, and now we've had over a year of Overwatch, there's a bit of a shift of focus for the community and for Blizzard as well. Now, it's not ignoring things that have come before it, but we as a community are more likely to start looking at the past. Now we've got a year's or so's worth of experience to look at. And as a result, there's more chance for fatigue or frustration the longer that people play a game. Now, I don't think that this fatigue feeling is any inherent single problem with the game, or that it really reflects on how healthy it is right now or how healthy it will be in future. We don't want this feeling as a community to continue. Now, my concern by this is if people get a bit fed up with competitive, will they still want to watch esports? Now, esports is important for the future of Overwatch for many different reasons. So, if people get disillusioned with competitive at a time when Overwatch is making an esports push, I wouldn't want Overwatch esports and the viewership of that to potentially be hurt by people getting fed up with competitive Overwatch and maybe not enjoying the competitive side of things, or maybe even leaving the game altogether. And we, whatever kind of Overwatch fan we are, want Overwatch esports to be strong. Even if you don't watch esports, we want it to be strong because it impacts the health and the longevity of the game. So what kind of things in Season 5 have people been talking about? Let's do a bit of an analysis and a bit of a think as to what's been going on that people might have been getting fed up by. Well, I'd say the first is in bad in-game behaviour. Now, there's a couple of different elements to this. There's the behaviour itself and maybe what causes it, and then also the perception of what's being done about it and what action can actually be taken about it. So, bad in-game behaviour, things like troll picks, things like smurfing, high-level players grabbing accounts and deranking or similar things like that. Now, there's probably a simple explanation where if there has been a feeling of more of this, where it may have come from. Now, remember, of course, around the Overwatch anniversary, Overwatch went on sale. There was also a Game of the Year edition. So there'll be two different things here. There will be, to a degree, hopefully, and this is good for the game, like more new people joining the game and playing Overwatch. But you will have more people buying accounts to make second or spare accounts. Now, obviously on PC here, I know that in terms of console, it's a little bit different the way that works. Now, anecdotally, I have seen a little bit more of this in Season 5 when you see that account that's brand new in Season 5, maybe placed in Plat or Diamond or so, and with lots of hours on one, maybe two heroes, you can generally see the behaviour whereby if they pick that one trick or they pick the one hero that they're focusing on, and sometimes sadly it's just in their name. If someone calls themselves Torbjorn Main, I'm generally guessing that's going to be a second account. Now, we do have to be careful on the flip side that we don't brand new players with a kind of smurfing tag or similar, and also that if people are trying out new heroes, we don't immediately throw them under the bus as well. A lot of people will be trying new heroes, and I think that because we're this far into Overwatch's life cycle, this brings on to the second maybe reason for some of this behaviour, a feeling of progression stagnation. People might feel that they're not progressing or able to progress sheerly in terms of ranking up, and I'm going to suggest some reasons as to why that might be. And perhaps fairly or unfairly, that they feel that the system is somehow impeding them from doing so. Now, I'm not saying this is right or wrong. In fact, probably on balance, I'd say that it's wrong and it's not the system, but there is this feeling from people. Let's say that players have peaked at a certain level of skill, and maybe they're not investing the time to improve in the right way, and I'd count myself amongst those people. So they try to challenge themselves or have fun in different ways, and this is where a lot of alt accounts come from. Now, a lot of people will take up a new hero in competitive on their alt account or maybe on their main, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the problem I think this season that I've seen a bit more of is a certain mentality, and it's I've played to Diamond Standard before, so that means that I'm good enough to go and play a new hero that I've not really played enough of straight away in competitive at Diamond or Platinum level, for example. Now, occasionally I've done this myself. As I said, when I've tilted a bit, it's 0.3 of a map that we're losing 2-0, and I've taken a Sombra when we're 2-0 down because I maybe feel that we're not doing enough DPS. So I've been here myself. I'm not being a hypocrite. That's not really the kind of thing you should be doing, and I've thrown away some SR because of it. However, I can, to a point, understand where if people are feeling frustrated and trying to do different things, where that feeling might be come from. And I do wonder, and I can't prove this, but whether it's something to do with win streaks. My feeling from my playing, and a few stats, a tiny stat size of course, is that Overwatch really punishes loss streaks. Win streaks are now harder to achieve and not so impactful in terms of your SR gain when they do. Now, this was a complaint amongst the community. I think it was in April that Blizzard made some tweaks to this. Now, after that, I went on the win streak that took me to Diamond. I think in total I won like 15 games and lost just 2 or 3 within a day and a half period of time. Now, if I'd done that win streak before April, that would have probably taken me almost all of the way to Master at 3,500. Afterwards, this took me to about 3,001 or so, my season high. I don't actually have any problem with the changes to win streaks. I don't think that rubber banding upwards or downwards based on, to a certain degree, fortune and luck in terms of your games and matchmaking. Obviously your skill, whether you group up or not, are factors you can control, but the luck outside of that, I don't think that should really be something that lets you catapult hugely up or hugely down in rank, and the consistency piece of play is fair. However, it still feels at the moment that loss streaks are overly punished, so the more loss streaks you put together, it's not only more SR that you're losing, but I do wonder, and I need to try and get some data on this, I've played a bunch of games. I actually record the results of every game in terms of SR, gain or loss that I have, and as well as a few notes on the game, like whether there are a large amount of support mains, whether I played particularly badly, and whether there were levers and similar things like that. Now, the thing I don't like about this feeling, whether it's true or not, is that it makes me feel that you have to be somewhat risk averse. Now, obviously managing your mindset, managing so that you're playing at your best is very, very important. And of course, I'm talking about mostly solo queue here. However, if you're being punished more for bad luck and for your bad play than you are being rewarded for your good play, or it feels that you're being punished more, even if that's not the actual case in reality, then it sets up this mindset of, if I slip down, it's going to be even harder for me to get back up again. And I think that's something that perhaps it would be really interesting to hear from on Blizzard, if indeed that's the case. So have you ever looked at your SR? Have you ever recorded it over a period of time and seen that if you string together a large amount of losses, you're perhaps losing a lot more than you're gaining? Here's an example of my gains over a win streak. Now, this was in mid-May, and you can see that here, and I know what I was doing here, it was pretty much over a day and a half period. I played my way out of Diamond as Soldier, and I was definitely improving as a player then, and I was getting a little bit fortunate as well with elect of throwers and teams. But you can see here how the SR slowly begins ramping up after about maybe 10 or so wins above 30. Now, there are so many factors that come into this that this is really, as I've said, just a feeling. Me sharing this sheet doesn't really prove that there's anything wrong or indeed anything of that sort at all. But it does feel that as soon as you start stringing a couple of losses together, then it feels like that there's a decrease not only in the SR that you're earning, but an increase in the SR that you're losing. Now, obviously, if you've been on a winning streak or if you're suddenly losing a few, the game is going to try and adjust where it thinks you might be. Do you belong at the rank that you are or not? I completely understand that. But it seems that The rewards of win streaks have been tweaked, and that is understandable, but the penalties of putting a losing streak together don't feel to be in the same place. Now, that is anecdotal from me. How does it feel for you? If you've got any data, I'd really love to know your thoughts on that. Whether there's any truth in that or it's just in my imagination, that is a feeling that a few people have been experiencing. You do see it pop up in various conversations about SR and MMR, and it's something that may contribute to this mindset. Maybe another reason that Season 5 has felt frustrating is the dive meta with its particulars. Now, the advent of dive, we will always have different metas that come in and out of fashion. Dive is a coordination thing. Now, a nice counter to diving is, of course, another dive. And if you have people picking similar sets of heroes, then I'd probably say on balance that at my rank level, I'm not going to talk for above diamond or below, say gold for this, that executing an attacking dive is easier than executing a defensive one. And people have learned to get the diva out of mech, but a good Winston can still terrorize backlines, and from my own painful experience, this happens in diamond as much as plat and on the gold border, that if people aren't grouping up, a Winston gets around the back or people are diving the back line. If they're ignored for too long, then you've already wasted half of your time on an assault map or half of your time on a King of the Hill attempt to take a point. Sombra, of course, is a very useful counter. She's slowly coming more into the competitive ladder meta, I'd call it, rather than the pro meta, where she's been established and popular for a few months. However, she needs team experience and coordination to play well and to play with well. On top of two supports, teams will struggle if the other DPS isn't firing up to scratch. If played as a second support, which she fairly is often in the pro scene, in the average gold, plat or diamond game, the team probably, I would say, if it's solo queue, isn't coordinated enough to support and protect her. Now, we've had this before and I'm sure we'll have it again. People got fed up with the 2-2-2, people got fed up with triple tank, Beyblade, you name it. This will always come in and out as a feeling in the community. Maybe dive has just felt particularly oppressive with the skill change or hero shift that's been required with it too. Take a bad Winston, which I am quite a lot of the time, more often than not. If you're playing a bad Winston, or if you have a bad Winston on your team, it's more damaging to your team in some ways if they're jumping in, dying and feeding ult charge to the enemy than, say, a bad Reinhardt who will stand there with his shield and be a little bit more linear, I would say, in previous metas. More Zen and Lucio play, of course, with the diving, and as a result, because Mercy is so popular, people are attempting to force Mercy, people are attempting to force Reinhardt into some of these more overall compositions where they're not perhaps so useful at the moment. A final thing that I'll cover quickly is the whole feeling specifically this season of the Mercy SR or one-trick conundrum. Now, before I start, I'm not having a go at support mains. I am that, if anything, along with a tank, or people who play a lot of Mercy, or indeed perhaps even only Mercy. This is this thing this season regarding people playing a lot of Mercy in a particular style who don't have a deeper hero pool that have probably, by the sounds of things, been tempting to try and game the SR system, if such a thing was ever indeed possible. So I put this last as it's been as much of a community feeling as anything that's actually been proved in data. Blizzard have never commented on it directly. Mercy has, however, been the most mains hero in Season 5, and she is ridiculously popular in quick play, according to Overwatch game data analyst Pro's Omnic Meta, and a link to their great article in the description below. Omnic Meta define a player having a main when that player plays more than 50% of all games with that hero. A one trick, I'm sure, would be a lot higher percentage than that. Often apparently 2 to 3 times the popularity of any other hero, Mercy is strong as a game character, she's accessible. That is all before even Resurrect itself, which is a reset button on a fight and arguably the most powerful ability in the game. Now, whether or not it's been true, the community has certainly perceived that Mercy has been easier, quote unquote, to gain SR with and to lose less with via a method of stacking big reses, waiting, hiding for that 3 to 5 man, rather than maybe doing the 1 to 2 man tempo res that would actually win the fight. Now, if this ever existed, then it may have been fixed. Noted Mercy player EVA mentioned on his stream not too long ago back, he felt that Mercy SR mechanics had changed, gaining a little bit less on average. I guess we'll see in time if a lot of one-trick Mercies who showed this specific kind of behaviour, I'm not branding all Mercies with the same brush, stop climbing or start dropping in their rank for the rest of Season 5 and onwards into Season 6. This is purely anecdotal, but I have felt a bit more people playing more Mercy in general in the skill brackets in which I play this season, or Mercy showing up a lot more in people's playtime for Season 5 in general. Now, as I've said, I record the results of most of my games, including checking players' most played heroes before every match to try help put a decent team composition together. If I have a game where I have 3 or 4 support mains, by the looks of things, I write that down. Now, there was a stage a few weeks back where data-wise, it really felt as if I was running into 3+ either Mercy mains or Mercy one tricks every 5 or 6 matches. I'm not criticising support mains who play a lot of Mercy here, but it does feel this season that there's been a big increase, perhaps even over last season's, on Mercy's adoption and playing competitive, and I can't help but think that this perception about SR is a part of that. Now remember, of course, that part of Overwatch's SR and MMR compares you and your performance to other people playing your hero. However, what stats does Overwatch have to do this? With Mercy, people have wondered whether it's something to do with Resurrects and why this has been impacting perhaps SR, MMR and similar. Now, broadly speaking, this will be easier for some heroes, some others. I play a lot of Symmetra, for example, and people have questioned through stats analysis whether she's getting any benefits from getting kills and things like that compared to other heroes. With Mercy, people thought this was to do with Resurrects, and the long and short of the matter is volume of Resurrects does not equal good performance as Mercy. However, it looked as though it might have been having something to do with how SR was being calculated. If I res one person and it turns the tide of a fight and we win, it's pretty hard for an SR or MMR system, or indeed the one that Overwatch seems to have right now, to recognise that above sheer volume of certain statistics. So this is where the thought that more reses equals more SR was coming from. So that's another thing that may have contributed towards the feeling of this season. Now, what could there be in terms of fixes? Well, I don't think this is long-term problems with Overwatch. I think all of this stuff will improve, but here are some things that are coming and here are some ideas I've had. In terms of meta change, well, there are already changes on the PTR that I covered briefly in a video the other day. Doomfist, when he launches, still feels kind of divey. They're taking a chunk of his mobility at the way at the moment and tweaking him around the edges. Sombra has seen a lot more popularity and use in recent months. She's trickling down from the pros. She can definitely have a stamp on this day-to-day meta. EMP is so strong and its charge rate at the moment. And Zarya's Graviton, locking people in that could previously get out of it, is the major change right now on the PTR. Locking in Mercies, locking in some of the divey heroes, the Genjis, the Tracers who could get out of this, will certainly give teams a bit more of an ability to stomp and to counter diving. Changes to the punishment or reporting system are apparently already incoming. Now, Jeff mentioned on the boards the other day that there's going to be a blog or something on this soon. This is going to be good, I think. Reporting people, some people have felt, and I think this has probably contributed to this sort of malaise or competitive fatigue, that even when they do report people, they don't see the consequences of the actions, or they can't necessarily see if something's happening. So whether it's visibility into whether people have been banned or suspended, or whether perhaps it's a change in terms of strictness of enforcement, I think that something is definitely going to be coming and helping there. So look forward to seeing what the team announce. Now finally, some of my ideas. Now I know that technically some of these might be very hard to implement. I'm not a systems or software engineer, but here are a couple of ideas. Allow me to leave a competitive game before pre-match begins without penalty. I don't want in some situations to have to queue with people who have been flaming, who have been one-tricking and similar such things. Now we do have the prefer player button, so I'd love to know a bit more about that. Does that actually do anything? I do use it in some situations. There's no avoid player button like there used to be for reasons that I'll discuss in a bit. And I do leave gaps in my queues when I queue sometimes if I've had a particularly frustrating person in a game. But I think this could be something to test. Now the debate from Blizzard's side, looking at the other side of the debate, will be a player experience one. Do you want longer matchmaking times, and do you want to be queuing into games only for people to be leaving? But I personally, and I don't know about you, would take a longer queue time to have a better experience. Now, not hugely longer, there would have to be tweaks about this, so is 10 minutes acceptable? Maybe. People at Grandmaster level and at higher levels often have to queue for a long time to get placed into what the matchmaker sees as a fair match because there are less of them. But at these wider levels, I would take a couple of minutes extra waiting in a queue for what I saw as a better match, if I could have some additional control over my queuing experience. Now, ultimately, Blizzard can say completely fairly, this is a team game, it is designed as such, it's best played as such, and you should look to queue up in small groups or full six stacks, which, you know what, that's true, I can't argue with that, but some kind of small refinement to the single player queuing experience, or crack down on the bad player behaviour, would really help just general feeling and goodwill right now, and indeed in future. Another idea here, avoid player on your team. Now this is a one that's cited so often, and Blizzard have come out a few times and said why this is hard to do. There was originally an avoid player function, but Blizzard cited an example a long time ago of the good Widowmaker, way back when. He was so good at Widow that people didn't want to play against him, and they marked him as a void player. He then found that because of the way a void player was working, he wasn't being paired with anyone, and his queue times were being unfairly increased, just because he was good at a particular hero. Now, a void player on your team, I think, gives you an additional level of power, and this is something that multiple people have said. It means that if I have someone on my team who I don't want to play with, if they're a troll, if they're messing around or whatever, I can avoid them, I don't want to play with them. And this exists in other games. Now, the Blizzard argument, I think here, and again this is fair, is what if this is used the wrong way? Let's say, for example, you have something unpopular, a Hanzo one trick, a Torbjorn one trick, who maybe is actually doing a good job, but people are just avoiding them for being a Torbjorn one trick. There's a debate as to whether that's punishing them unfairly if they're playing and winning or not, and I know that that is kind of unfair in a way, like it was towards the Widow, but surely there could be some way to correlate the success of their play with their one-tricking status or reports. So if they're a Torb one-trick and they're making it work, then surely they'll get less reports anyway. Or if they are being reported, Blizzard can have a look somehow at, say, their matchmaking history. Then why can't those two be correlated together? If someone's been reported 20 times for being a Torb one-trick, yet they're gaining an SR, and yet they're winning more matches than they're losing, surely there should be something that can mitigate their ban or suspend their ban or something if it's an automatic system that kicks in, or it's a manual system or otherwise that kicks in. I know that's cross-referencing two different systems, the report system with the players playing history, but wouldn't that make a better system in that sense? And then you could avoid people on your own team. Now, that technically could be a massive challenge, but I feel that something like that could just really, really help. Okay, this has been a long ramble. How has your Season 5 been? Whatever rank you are, have you noticed more or less of these particular kinds of behaviour? What problems have you come across? And if you group up for competitive regularly, do you not see these problems as much? Do I just need to get good and regularly queue again with some people in a small group? I think the answer is yes to both of those. So I'm going to try and set myself a goal of hitting Masters by the end of Season 6. The first thing I need to do is try and repair my SR to get a good mid-level diamond by the end of Season 5. And I think that I'm going to have to try and queue up in small groups and try and find some people to queue with, analyse my play and focus on a couple of heroes to improve in the right way and play in the right way. Playing lots of games isn't going to make me improve more as a player. And finally, manage my tilting. If I lose 2 games in a row on a day, I don't think I should probably be competitive for the rest of the day. So as much as there are some problems, I'm sure some of these are perception, and a lot of these we can actually ultimately, whether we group up or whether we focus on improving our own play, just fix ourselves. Changes incoming. If your Season 5 has felt bad, I'm sure there are reasons why, but I think that it's going to get better. Thanks very much for tuning in. Do like or subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. I know this was a bit of a long thought piece, as it were, a little bit of opinion. So do you like this kind of thing for me? Do you not? Is it good? Is it bad? Do tell me what you thought in the comments and how I can improve. Check out all of my regular Overwatch lore, voice lines, interactions, and more vids, as well as bits of news in these playlists here too. And we'll be back with Overwatch lore in the next couple of days, and as always, from early next week. Cheers for tuning in. I've been Hammeh. Take it easy.